We talked about this yesterday, and about the number of questions that people missed. It's changed a little bit because we had 2 more people take an exam, so it's changed a little bit, but not by much. But that gives you some idea of the questions that you need to concentrate on, because likely you were you individually were one of the ones that probably missed it. For example, this is about the entire class. All right, so let's go over them one by one, right? Okay, number 1. Looks like about 18 people missed number 1. But the fact is, no report is required. Why? Because, pardon? It's under $500, yeah. It could be repaired for $400. So if it can be repaired for $400, it's under the $500 limit. Any questions about that? All right, number 2. Who's got the right answer? A? That's right. 0.55 pounds. Okay, number 3. Look at number 3. Can you imagine? The entire class got it wrong. That's because it's kind of a trick question, and I don't blame you for getting it wrong. What I want you to do is remember this question, because it may very well show up on your final exam or even one tomorrow. I don't think it's going to show up on the exam I'm going to give you this afternoon. But it is going to show up. It likely will show up somewhere later on, because it's the kind of question the FAA likes. All right, number 4. Number 4, not so bad. Only a few people. It looks like only 4 people in the class got that wrong. So those of you who got it wrong, pay attention to the fact that anytime you're acting as pilot in command, you have to have that in your possession. So those of you who are looking at your test and you realize you got it wrong, make a note on there somewhere. Just because I circled the correct answer doesn't mean that that's going to help you any. Make a note for yourself. Maybe try to think of some way that you can remember the correct answer. Number 5. And that's always the case. Number 5 is always the case about the proposed operation. It always is going to be a situation where it can be conducted safely without injuring persons or property. You'll see that kind of phraseology used in a number of different ways. So be prepared for questions that are similar to that involve an answer that says, not endangering persons or property on the ground. Number 6. You want to drop a few golf balls off of your drone, right? There we are again, right? What's the answer? A, right. So you don't endanger persons or property, or damage persons or property on the ground. Number 7. Somebody loses consciousness. What happens there? Yeah, you have, and when it's a matter of losing consciousness, you have 10 days in which to file a report. These are the kind of things that have to do with regulations, and there are no ways to calculate regulations. You either remember them or you don't. So you've got 30 days to change your address. You've got 10 days to file a report if there's been an injury or damage in excess of $500. Those are the kind of trigger time frames that you need to remember. there's no easy way for me to convince you that answer is going to just come out of your brain somewhere. You're going to have to work at it. Okay, number 8. Number 8. Did anybody get number 8 wrong? Oh, one person, it looks like, got number 8 wrong. And the answer is always going to be remote pilot and command. Who else? Number 9. If you've had any alcoholic beverage at all, I don't care how small it is, Jesus. You go back in the back corner over there, please. You sit over in the back corner. It's not necessarily funny, is it, Jesus? Okay, alcoholic beverages, you have 8 hours and that's it. And that's true for pilots as well. It's 8 hours bottle to throttle, they call it. And you need to remember that. It's 8 hours, and it's 8 hours for a drone pilot, and it's 8 hours for an aircraft pilot. It's the same 8 hours. Number 10. This was a figure. So let's go to the figure. And the question here is, at what altitude, maximum above ground level, can you go? And you can see here, this is the better camera, isn't it? The better projector. You can see here, they're really talking about, here's the airport of interest. They're talking about this level of antenna, and here you can see it's 402 feet above the ground. So the maximum you can go above the ground with your drone is 802 feet. And number 10, unfortunately, let's see how many people missed number 10. 21 people missed number 10. So you have to make a note for yourself that you find out where the little antenna group is. Look at the number in parentheses. Does anybody know what the word parenthesis means? Okay, so the number in parenthesis is the number of feet above ground. The number above it is the number of feet MSL, mean sea level. So all you have to do is find that level of towers they're talking about, get the AGL number off of it, and then add 400 feet to it, because that's the highest you can go in the drone, 400 feet above the ground. Above that. All right, what action, if any, is appropriate if you deviate from Part 107? That's number 11.
Wait, Mr.
Yes.
Number 10 again? For the 802.
Okay, you have number 10, the question in front of you, correct? The number 10, right? And so you're asking what now?
On the chart?
This is the airport of interest, right?
Yeah.
And the way you get that is it said Sioux, Gateway, County, something or other. And that's this airport right here. And it says south of the airport there are towers.
Yeah.
And the towers are here.
Okay, now I see it. I can barely see that on the paper too. Where it's
Yeah, and what I'm showing you here is I'm showing you color, and quite large, so it's going to be a little fuzzy. You're still not going to get color figures from me, and I'm certainly going to take consideration for that. But in your exam with the FAA, you will get color pictures, and all the rest of these I'm going to show you are in color. You're going to get color pictures to show you and to make it much easier to answer the question. But I want to caution you right now, do not stop at a question that asks you for a figure. It's going to delay your time. You need to go all the way through the test. Like the first test had 11 figured questions, right? You should have gone through all 49 non-figure questions first and then gone back and tried the figures. For two reasons. First of all, because if it's an FAA test, you're going to be wasting a lot of time doing figures, and you may wind up not enough time to finish the non-figure questions, which are usually a little easier. except that the figure questions are gimmies. But you can't sit there. Also, by the way, you are allowed to bring into the test calculators. So you don't have to sit there and try to do it by hand, as I know a lot of you had to do. Anyway, so 402, and on top of that, you put a drone, and that's 802 feet. Okay, number 11. If you deviate in an emergency, your basic idea is, unless somebody wants you to send a report in, you don't have to. So it's a matter of sending a report on request, only on request. Because in an emergency, if you deviate in an emergency, let's say there was an emergency and it looked like you saw an airplane heading for your drone, and your best course of action at that point in time would be to raise the drone up real quick, right? Above the 400-foot limit. Plane passes, you come back down to 400. Why would you send a report unless the FAA says to you, hey, there was an incident, we'd like a report from you? But if nobody says anything to you, probably nobody even notices it except you. So don't make an assumption in these questions that's not there. Take the question at face value. Okay, which aircraft has the right of way over other traffic? An airplane. An airplane's going to have right of way over anything you could put in the air that in any way resembles any kind of a drone, a quadcopter, anything. Any UAS vehicle does not have the right of way over an airplane, a manned aircraft. Why would you think that would be the case? Well, I think the issue for me is that if there was a collision, would anybody die in the quadcopter? Would anybody die in the drone? No. But people, maybe even as high as 6 or 8 or 10 or more people, would be injured or killed in a manned aircraft. Okay, number 13. Minimum safe altitude for a remote pilot over people. And you're going to have to remember this. You're going to have to memorize it. You cannot fly over people unless they're part of your crew. Period. There's no waiver. There's no special deal made with the FAA. It just says, period, you can't do it. So if you see that question again, you'll answer it. Osvaldo. Pardon? What if they... Who's aware of it? Who would be aware of it? Would be aware of what now? No, not aware of it. They have to be in your crew. You can't fly over people who are just aware of the drone operation. You simply can't fly over people at all unless they're part of your crew. Around your area, around the crew, the people who are there observing what you're doing. Yeah. Are you sure they were flying over the Super Bowl? Drones were?
Yeah, at halftime.
Oh, at halftime. Oh.
Yeah, and I did.
They probably got a waiver then from the FAA, right? Your best bet, though, when you're taking one of these tests is just to say, no, you can't fly over people who are not part of the crew. That would be the safest way to do it. Okay, you're operating a quadcopter for your own enjoyment. What part applies to you? Pardon? Only a Part 48, right. Part 107 doesn't apply to you because you're doing it for your enjoyment. You're not trying to make any money. It's not a commercial operation. You're just doing it for enjoyment. But you still have to register, and that's Part 48. Remember, I asked specifically to show you what the rules and regulations were regarding Part 48. I put it up on the lecture in detail. So be careful of that one. We've encountered that several times. Okay, when using a small unmanned aircraft in a commercial operation, who's responsible for briefing the participants about emergency operations? Yeah, remote pilot and command. I mean, that's 14. I can't even, I can't do it. Never mind. Okay. Number 16. Which of the following individuals can process an application? Process is the key word here. Not get an application, not make an application, but process an application. You can't process an application for your own license. It has to be done by someone else. Right. And in this case, that someone else is called a designated pilot examiner. Do you know what a designated pilot examiner is? Okay, the FAA, in the early days of the FAA, hold on. Hello, this is Harold.
Okay, I never received it. Did you send it yet?
I did. I sent it to your email.
Okay, I haven't gotten it. So do you want to try again? Because it's not here.
Okay, let me see if I got your email correct.
Here was it to Amanda?
No, I sent it to you. Hold on. How about using the time to study? I sent that. I sent a copy of that note to Roberta's email.
I just got it. I'm going to send it to Trish.
Okay, thanks. Bye. All right, designated pilot examiner. A couple of decades ago, the FAA had their own pilot examiners. That is, if you were ready to take your check ride, you went to an FAA representative, presented yourself, they gave you the written exam, they gave you an oral exam, and then they took you up in an airplane and gave you a flight exam. Got to the point budget-wise where the FAA figured out that if they allowed other civilian pilots to become testers, to become examiners, that it would save them a lot of money, and it would easily encourage some of the pilots to work hard because they know they could get an appointment right away, because at that time appointments were running into the days, weeks, and months. So today there are DPEs everywhere, designated pilot examiners. They're in gliders, they're in powered aircraft, they're in special jet aircraft, they're everywhere. They are not usually FAA employees, they are individual civilian employees who are paid by you if you're taking your check ride. Okay, so in this particular case, the only one that could process that out of that list would be the designated pilot examiner. All right, number 17. I think we've covered this a number of times. Number 17 says, you got your license now. How many months can you go before you have to get it renewed again? Yeah, 24. That's the same with pilot licenses. That's the same with almost any kind of license that you can get in aviation. You have 24 months in which to use your current license before you have to take a recurrency test. It's not a difficult test. We as pilots I have to go up with a flight instructor, even though I'm a flight instructor, and I probably have several thousand hours more than a flight instructor. I still have to go up with him. He has to evaluate whether I'm still safe, and then he signs me off saying, yes, I'm giving you what is called a biennial flight review. Every 2 years, right? Every 2 years, I have to do it. So do all the pilots in the world, I think, except the commercial airline pilots, because they have to be tested every 6 months. So. Okay, number 18. Better hurry along here so we have time to do the test. Number 18. Okay, to whom must I present my remote pilot certificate? An FAA inspector. A number of you said person of authority. Well, a person of authority could be the chairman of the department here. Or a person of authority might be the general manager of a local Save Mart. So don't read into things that probably aren't there. So as soon as you saw a person of authority, you should have said, well, there are all kinds of persons of authority out there. I can't just go up and hand my license or hand my application to somebody that runs a beehive, all right? What you want to do is make sure that when you read the question, throw out the ones that just don't seem to make any sense. All right, number 19, the taxiway ending marker indicates the taxiway doesn't continue. So there are a couple of questions where the FAA will put in the question certain key words, and then they'll put in the answer, the right answer, those same key words. And one of them that I remember is something about the taxiway doesn't, something else, something, the whole line or something like that. There was a question we may even encounter here. I don't know whether it was this one or one before. But that's what the FAA does. They put keywords in the question, then those keywords, you should look for the keywords in the answer. All right, number 20, what information is contained in Notices to Airmen? And in that, you're going to have to remember, it's in Notices to Airmen publication. It's the publication, which is a book on all NOTAMs. And so the answer there is all current NOTAMs are contained in that publication. Just remember that the FAA doesn't put out a publication for real current NOTAMs. If they're going to put up a NOTAM, for example, about something happening tomorrow, it's not going to appear in a publication somewhere. It's going to appear in, you can get online and you can get it immediately, but it's not going to appear in a book of all current NOTAMs. Number 21, refer to figure 20. Well, this is figure 20, and let's see, oh, they were talking about this airport? Contact frequency. Am I on the right one here? Is this the right one? Okay. And what area? Area 3, okay. Yeah, so down here. And what was this? Was this the airport, right? The Elizabeth City, right. Elizabeth City. And let's see, which one is this? So this is Elizabeth City. And so the frequency is going to be CT 120.5. You can hardly read it. But CT is control tower, right? And so when you see an airport that has a control tower, look for the initial CT, control tower, and then the frequency is right after that. So the frequency there is 120.5. That's the answer for that one. Okay, what's next? 20. All right, so that's the bottom one. And so the next one is the floor of Class B airspace at Dallas Executive. Okay, so here's Dallas-Fort Worth, gigantic Class B airport here, right? And you can see that with the blue lines around. In fact, you don't even have to see them in blue. If this was black and white like it is on your thing, you know that these kind of circles all the way around, concentric circles, have to be a Class B. Because a Class C, D, and E only have one circle. They don't have this huge thing here. So anyway, but it doesn't ask that. It asks for an airport down here, doesn't it? Dallas Executive, right here. But now they're under Class Bravo airspace. So this number here represents the fact that the top of Class Bravo airspace is 11,000, and the floor over Dallas Executive is 3,000. So if you look for Dallas Executive, which was here, and if you just look down here, you immediately saw that the floor of Class Bravo airspace over Dallas Executive is only 3,000. All right, here's that one we just talked about a few minutes ago. What is the purpose of the position markings on the taxiway? And A, it says, holds aircraft short of the runway. The key words are in the question, the key words are in the answer. So in number 23, the answer is A, holds short of the runway. Holds aircraft short of the runway. All right, number 24. What airspace class is in this airport? And I think I talked about that the other day, and here it is, airspace class Echo. Those are gimmies, right? These are one of those, you know you're going to find it. The answer is there somewhere. All you have to do is find it. And you will have plenty of time in the FAA final exam. So don't worry about the fact that you were hurried during these sample tests that I've been giving you. I completely understand the situation. All right, number 25. Let's go to 25. They asked about the blue lines, and again, the blue lines, or these are all Victor Airways, all these blue lines here. And anytime you see a blue line with a V68 or a V173, it's a Victor Airway. And what is true of a Victor Airway? They always go from VOR to VOR. And a VOR is represented by this magnetic circle, and the VOR is located right here on the airport. And so you can see that Victor Airways always go VOR to VOR. They don't wander off in some distance somewhere. You can bet that anything going off of here, anything going off the map, here's one going to this VOR down here, this is probably going to another VOR. Same with these over here. They are going to some VOR somewhere. Okay, number 26. If you're going to operate in Class Charlie airspace, what happens? What's in Class Charlie airspace that's necessary that you know is a requirement? All Class Charlie airspaces have what in common? Pardon? A control tower. Exactly. So a B, C, and D airspaces, bounded airspaces, always have a control tower. Any questions about that? Number 27, FDC NOTAM contains information about military operations. You're not going to see an FDC NOTAM talking about gatherings of large groups. You won't see it available flat, hard surface runways. Those are not flight. FDC is Flight Data Center NOTAMs. Flight Data Center, and because it's headed up by the initials FDC, it means that it has to have something to do with flight operations. And large groups of people, no, and neither are hard surface runways. All right, number 28. Inspect the tracks. Okay, here are the tracks. Everybody better learn what a track is. A railroad track, it's a line with little ticks on it, indicating railroad ties. And so here it says from Blencoe to Ottawa, you're going to go from here to here. What class airspace? It has to be Class G, because remember we start off when we talk about airspace, I say all over the United States with certain exceptions is Class G from the ground to 1,200 feet or 700 feet depending. And since there are no other markings at all around this railroad track spur from here to here, it has to be Class G airspace. So the answer there is B. Your entire flight is in Class G airspace. Which publication contains an explanation of airport signs and markings? And almost everybody got that right, as I recall. That's A, Aeronautical Information Manual, AIM. Number 30. Sulphur Springs Airport, where there's active traffic. You don't even have to look at that, I guess you have to look at that to some degree, but the point is that the answer there is the existing manned traffic. They have the right of way, period. No, there's no question about it. So the Sulphur Springs Airport, right, here, you just have to be careful that any aircraft coming in or out and making patterns to get into the airport. Remember the pattern rule? If you go to an airport and it doesn't have a control tower, you make left turns. You always make left traffic, unless there's an RP below the information of a particular airport, in which case, I don't see any there, in which case you have to make a right pattern as you're entering. I don't see any at all. So, anyway, we've covered that. I showed you an example of that. Okay, Sulphur Springs. The next one is 31. A stable air mass is most likely to have which characteristic? Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, it's Trish. Okay, that letter is a fake. They spoke to transportation and they spoke to Patty, the driver. So they're not getting picked up until regular time, which is 3 o'clock.
Okay.
So, who was the name of the student that gave it to you?
Hold on a second. Who's the one that gave me that note from the driver? Was it you, Raziel? Were you the one that gave me that note from the driver? Okay. His name is Raziel Mercado.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are you the rest of the students know about this?
Oh,
That's that, right?
I don't know.
They're all getting down, right?
Yep.
That's okay.
Okay.
But he's the one that gave you the note.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. What's the next one here? For Springs, the next one is a stable air mass, and here the problem is that you're just going to have to remember the weather functions. And when a warm air mass comes in over the top of a cold air mass, it lays on top of it. Right? And by laying on top of it, it causes a squeezing of the air down, and it squeezes it into horizontal layers of cloud. Tends to squeeze the air. At least it tends to let the air get into horizontal, and it drizzles constantly. That's the particular discussion here, where a stable air mass is the result of a warm front coming over on top of a cold front. The opposite is true if a cold front displaced a warm front. The cold front wedges underneath the warm front because the cold air is heavier than the warm air. And as it wedges underneath, it drives the air vertically. So you will get instability. You'll get unstable air in an air mass where the cold is replacing the warm. In this particular case, a stable air mass means that a warm front has displaced a cold front. So you're going to get poor surface visibility and drizzles and sometimes just thick haze. All right, the minimum visibility is required for SUAS operations. I don't know how anybody missed that. We've used that word 3 miles so many times that if I had a penny for every time, I could probably retire. All right, so the other thing is that the next question has to do with a thunderstorm, and you're just going to have to remember that the answer is mature stage. Now, also, I showed you a downburst movie. Remember I showed you a downburst movie that took place in Arizona where the cloud burst, the downburst came out? That's usually the result of the end of a thunderstorm, not the beginning and not the middle. It's usually the end. It's not the mature stage, it's not the cumulus stage, it's the dissipating stage. So just keep in mind there are three different stages, and the stage that has to do with the downburst is dissipating. The stage that has to do with thunderstorms is the mature stage. Thunderstorms, of course, they're present, but it says their greatest intensity is in the mature stage. All right, number 34. If the outside air temperature is warmer than standard, remember that density altitude is negative. It's a bad term. So if you increase density altitude by increasing temperature, that means it's not a good thing. So don't think that density altitude represents anything other than bad. And if you listen to the ATIS and it says the density altitude, for example, at Reedley might be 3,000 feet, that means it's very hot that day, and the airplane is going to behave as though it was flying in and out of an airport located at 3,000 feet above the ground, or 3,000 feet above the sea level. So density altitude, negative. You don't want density altitude. You want it to be negative, if anything, but you certainly don't want positive density altitude. In this particular case, if you have warmer than standard, that means the density altitude is going to be higher. It's going to be a real bad thing because your airplane's not going to behave as well as it would if the density altitude was lower. All right, one of the most easily recognized discontinuities across a front. Well, if a warm front replaces the cold front, what's the easiest thing to see? Change in temperature, right? Because you're going from a warm temperature front to a cold temperature front. And so the easiest discontinuity between the two has to be a change in temperature because you're going from a warm front to a cold front or vice versa. Now, number 36, what are characteristics of stable air? Here we go again. Poor visibility and pretty steady precipitation. Not here in California, though. We're not talking about California. And this is not a question that you can probably say, well, it doesn't happen in California. You're right, it probably doesn't happen in California, but I can tell you it happens everywhere east of the Mississippi River. Number 37, weather phenomena, which occurs when flying directly across a front. There's always a change in wind direction. There is always a change in wind direction when you go from one front to the next. And if you're flying along country, as you may be in the future, you'll notice that. Number 38, what's the expected duration of an individual microburst? I didn't even know that. So it's one of those questions, some of you got it right probably by luck. Some of you may remember better than I did when we saw the movie about the microburst. The fact is they seldom last longer than 15 minutes. That's the answer, number C. All right, Chicago Midway Airport. Pardon? All right, Chicago Midway Airport, OVC, 7, and if it's just 7 by itself, it can only be 700, right? It can't be 7,000. It would have to be 070 to be 7,000 because you only add 2 zeros at the end of the overcast. So it's 1.5 statute miles in rain, overcast 700 feet, temperature 17, dew point 16. Altimeter 2980, remarks, rain began at 3:05 past the hour, RAB. You're not likely to be asked a question on the remarks section, but that happens to be what the remarks is about. Rain began 3:05 minutes past the hour. Any questions on that? Okay, let's go to the next one. The weather report lists the ceiling of 800 feet. And remember, 800 feet ceiling is above ground, not MSL. So if the ceiling is 800 feet, and how many feet below a cloud do you have to remain? 500. Right? So that means how many feet above the ground can you get your drone? Right? 300 feet, that's it. So the answer there is 40C is the answer. Number 47, the most critical conditions of launch performance is an unfavorable wind. I think most of you got that one. Number 42, what's 41, I guess. For number 42, if an unmanned airplane weighs 33 pounds, this is one of those things where all you had to do is multiply the weight times 1.154 because it was a 30-degree bank. You multiplied by that, and that's the answer. In fact, the answer came out to be about 57.7, but that was as close to 60, so the answer is 60. In 43, I should say. Not 42 is, it came out to be 38 pounds. All right, the angle of attack at which an aircraft stalls remains the same. The angle remains the same because it's built into the wing. The angle at the chord line, remember it, the angle of attack is the distance between the chord line, right? The way the wing is set on the fuselage of the aircraft. So the angle of attack doesn't change. The angle, it doesn't change in the stall. If it might, the speed at which the aircraft stalls will change, but not the angle. Okay, the amount of excess load that can be imposed on the wing of an airplane depends upon the speed of the airplane. Position of the CG does not change the load on the thing. Neither does the abruptness at which the load is applied. You can apply a 1G load whether it's slowly applied or you can apply it abruptly. It's still 1G. So the only thing that can change is the speed of the airplane. 46. Who's responsible for determining the performance of a small UAS? That's the remote pilot in command. 47. A UAS loaded with the most rearward center of gravity. Now, your hackle should have arisen at that question because all of a sudden the FAA is saying, hey, here is a condition which may not be unsafe, but it's probably not very smart to have a most rearward center of gravity. So your answer should be negative in that case, and the answer is less stable at all speeds. The other two answers are not correct. It can't be more stable if all of a sudden you've taken the CG from right where it belongs and moved it as far back as you can legally get it. It's going to be unstable. We're going to probably quit here in a minute. So I think we've taken most of the things. Let's see, sectional chart. People were marking road maps for terrain information. Road maps, if they have any terrain information, it's almost worthless because it doesn't give you the kind of detail you need. The only answer to number 48 is a sectional chart. That's where you're going to get the terrain information. And number 49, a turn is the thing that puts the most load on an aircraft, any aircraft, whether it's a UAV or whether it's a powered aircraft. And most people got number 50, shorter endurance. 51 was, let's see. Yeah, 51 was the recommended procedure, communication procedure, and it has on there 122.9 for, so you have a 122.9 right here. These are all questions that have the answer given to you. We're going to go ahead and we'll take a 10-minute break now, and then at 25 after, we are immediately going to start on the next test. We're not even going to finish going over this quiz. We're going to start the next test immediately, so we'll be back here ready to go with the test at 2:25. Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
3, because like on the paper part, it's hard to read. So the CT means control tower, but that's the frequency.
Yeah, but the common traffic advisory frequency for an airport that doesn't have a control tower is 122.9. It'll be listed there. You'll be able to see it better when you take the final exam, when you take the FAA exam. So this is just to get you an idea of where the information is, not necessarily that you can read it perfectly.
So what are those letters be? Wait, is that even right? Which one did you say it is? It's not AWAS. That's like weather, right?
That's correct. This is AWAS is the weather. So it's the next line down.
Below, what's the L stand for?
Lighted. The airport is lighted for night operations.
Okay, thank you.
This is the length of the longest runway.
Oh, okay.
And then the next one is the frequency, the common traffic advisory frequency. And then this means that it's the control. You can control the lighting at the airport with your switch. Your switch when you're turning to frequency. When you're making a call 122.9,
Yeah?
you could turn on the lights at the airport by clicking it 3 or 4 times in a row. Okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, one more, please.
Sure.
One more, I need a little tip on, because I did get this, I didn't answer this one, so I wasn't sure. And I know you mentioned this before, but what's the easiest way? Or you always have to look at the figure and figure it out because of the curve, the 50 pounds?
Yeah, because you don't know what that 30 stands for. So it's 1.154 is the increased load on the wings of the airplane.
And then you just do it like
And
this
yeah,
50
that's exactly
times.
right. Uh-huh.
Sometimes I can't grasp whatever, even if I've seen it before, so I'm trying to remember it.
On the chart, you know how it's away from find the question. Because this is the load is 50, so you multiply that 50 times
1.154.
so you multiply that, and then that gives the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, let's see, where are we here? Oh, there. So it says 30-degree bank, right?
Yeah.
All right, so a 30-degree bank, the load factor is 1.154, and you multiply that times the weight that was stated there.
Oh.
And both those questions are exactly the same.
Yeah.
You got this one right and this one wrong.
Yeah.
How'd you do that, Matthew?
Because I didn't know, I didn't get the chart. That's why I had trouble with the chart.
The chart's in there, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I just didn't get it.
All right, good. Hey, Nick, is that Francisco? Is he here? The one behind you? Huh? Not here, okay. I expect you to get a good mark this time as well. Don't say hopefully, say positively. So many of you were so close to getting 70%. So many of you. I'll bet you at least half the class was only about 2 or 3 questions away from having passed the exam the first time. So let's hope you can do as well this one. Oh, here's yours. You get that back again. Let's see who else is here. Osvaldo, what are you going to do about your modern aerospace? You either took it or you didn't. Yeah, you need to tell me. Well, I suggest you look for it and let me know because it... Thank you. Mauricio. Oh, no, you're okay. All right, books away, everybody. Books and notes and anything else. And remember the questions that you got wrong on the previous test. Remember how to read a question and use your common sense. Don't jump to a conclusion and don't assume something's in the question that's not there at all. Just take the question at face value and work on it that way. Okay? All right, guys. The test is in progress. You have a test? I thought I gave 3 of them, no?
Thank you, sir.
I'll put the one back there. There goes Zach. Pardon? All right, be smart about this test now. Get your notes off the desk. This was not an open book test. Did you realize that, Sergio? Remember, go to the figure questions last.